The frigid February air hung heavy over Detroit. The city, known for its resilience and grit, seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for something to break the icy silence. The streets were eerily quiet, with only the occasional car passing by, its tires crunching on the snow-covered roads. Street lights cast long shadows, creating an almost surreal atmosphere, as if the city itself was a character in a noir film. Snow crunched under the boots of four figures approaching a modest brick house. Their movements were deliberate, each step calculated to avoid drawing attention. The house, with its dimly lit windows, stood as a silent witness to the unfolding drama. The figures, cloaked in the darkness, moved with a sense of purpose, their breath visible in the cold night air. They wore dark tactical gear, badges gleaming under the streetlights. The gear was standard issue, but there was something off about the way they carried themselves. Their eyes, hidden behind dark visors, scanned the surroundings with a predatory intensity. These were not ordinary officers. Their presence exuded a sense of menace and foreboding. This was no ordinary police raid. The air was thick with tension, and the silence was almost deafening. The figures moved with a precision that spoke of military training, their actions choreographed to perfection. This was a well-rehearsed operation, and they were about to execute it with ruthless efficiency. This was the work of the Detroit Impostors. A notorious gang known for their audacious heists, they had perfected the art of deception. Disguised as law enforcement, they had pulled off numerous high-stakes robberies, leaving a trail of confusion and chaos in their wake. Their reputation was built on fear and cunning, and tonight, they were about to add another chapter to their legend. Inside, James Jimmy Brown relaxed, counting the night's take from his illicit gambling operation. The room was filled with the soft hum of a heater, a stark contrast to the biting cold outside. Jimmy, a seasoned player in Detroit's underworld, was unaware of the danger lurking just beyond his door. The stacks of cash on the table represented his hard-earned gains, a testament to his cunning and ruthlessness. A knock at the door sent a jolt through him. His heart raced as he glanced at the clock, the unexpected visit setting off alarm bells in his mind. He wasn't expecting anyone, especially not at this hour. The knock was firm, authoritative, and it carried with it an unspoken threat. Two men in uniform stood on his porch. Their faces were obscured by the shadows, but their posture was unmistakable. They exuded an air of authority, their presence demanding attention. The uniforms were perfect, down to the last detail, but there was something unsettling about their demeanor.
"Police, sir. We have a warrant." The voice was calm, almost too calm, and it carried a hint of menace. The words were spoken with a confidence that left no room for doubt, but there was an underlying tension that Jimmy couldn't ignore.
Jimmy, no stranger to the law, knew something was off. His instincts, honed by years of navigating the treacherous waters of Detroit's criminal underworld, screamed at him to be cautious. He had dealt with the police before, but this felt different. There was an edge to the situation that he couldn't quite put his finger on. He never saw these cops before. Their faces were unfamiliar, and in his line of work, knowing the faces of law enforcement was a matter of survival. These men were strangers, and that alone was enough to set off alarm bells in his mind. Before he could react, the door burst open. The force of the impact sent splinters flying, and the sound echoed through the house like a gunshot. Jimmy's heart pounded in his chest as he realized the gravity of the situation. This was no ordinary visit. This was an invasion. The officers stormed in, shouting commands, their movements practiced and precise. The room was filled with a cacophony of noise, the shouts blending with the sound of boots on the floor. Jimmy's mind raced as he tried to make sense of the chaos unfolding around him. They restrained Jimmy and his men, their faces hidden behind ski masks. Fear choked Jimmy's bravado. This wasn't a shakedown, this was different. The masks added an element of terror, obscuring the identities of the invaders and adding to the sense of helplessness. Jimmy's mind raced as he tried to figure out who these men were and what they wanted. The imposters worked swiftly, ransacking the house, taking cash, jewelry, anything of value. Their movements were efficient, each action executed with precision. They knew exactly what they were looking for, and they wasted no time in gathering their loot. The house, once a sanctuary for Jimmy, was now a scene of utter chaos. They moved with military precision, their leader barking orders in a hushed, guttural voice. The leader's voice cut through the noise, directing the operation with an iron fist. Each member of the team knew their role, and they executed their tasks with a level of professionalism that was both impressive and terrifying. Within minutes, They were gone, disappearing into the night as quickly as they arrived, leaving behind a shaken Jimmy and a scene of calculated chaos. The silence that followed was almost deafening, a stark contrast to the chaos that had just unfolded. Jimmy was left to pick up the pieces, his mind reeling from the audacity and precision of the attack. The Detroit impostors had struck again, and their legend continued to grow. Word of the impostors spread through Detroit's underworld like wildfire. It was as if a new force had emerged from the shadows, a force that was both feared and respected. The whispers in the dark corners of the city spoke of a group that was unlike any other. They were not just another gang looking to carve out a piece of the criminal pie. No, the impostors had a different agenda, one that was shrouded in mystery and executed with precision. These weren't your average thugs. They moved with a purpose, their eyes cold and calculating. Each member seemed to have a specific role, a unique skill set that contributed to the group's overall efficiency. They were like a well-oiled machine, each part working in perfect harmony to achieve their goals. They were organized, disciplined, and terrifyingly efficient. Their operations were planned down to the smallest detail, leaving nothing to chance. They used advanced tactics, reminiscent of military operations, and their precision was unmatched. It was clear that they had undergone extensive training, and their coordination was impeccable. They used police tactics, spoke in code, and vanished without a trace. Their ability to disappear after a hit was almost supernatural. It was as if they were ghosts, leaving no evidence behind. The authorities were baffled, unable to track their movements or predict their next target. Their targets were always criminals, drug dealers, illegal gambling dens, loan sharks. They seemed to have a moral code, a twisted sense of justice. They were cleaning up the streets in their own brutal way, taking down those who preyed on the weak and vulnerable. The impostors knew the layout of their targets, their routines, their weaknesses. It was as if they had access to inside information, details that only someone on the inside would know. This knowledge gave them a significant advantage, allowing them to strike with precision and efficiency. It was like they had inside information. Their intelligence network was vast and well-connected, providing them with the data they needed to execute their plans flawlessly. They were always one step ahead, anticipating every move and countering it with ruthless efficiency. As the weeks turned into months, the impostors grew bolder, their raids more daring. They began to take on bigger targets, their confidence growing with each successful hit. Their reputation spread, and soon, they were the most feared group in the underworld. They hit a notorious chop shop, disappearing with a cache of weapons and cash. This was a significant blow to the criminal network, as the chop shop was a major hub for illegal activities. The impostors' ability to infiltrate and exfiltrate without detection was nothing short of remarkable. They robbed a high-stakes poker game frequented by known mobsters, making off with a small fortune. Their violence escalated too. The poker game was a high-profile event, and the impostors' audacity in targeting it sent shockwaves through the criminal community. They were no longer just a nuisance, they were a serious threat. A drug dealer was found beaten within an inch of his life, his stash gone. This was a clear message to the underworld. The impostors were not to be trifled with. Their brutality was a warning to others who might think of crossing them. A loan shark, known for his brutality, was discovered bound and gagged, his fingers broken. The impostors were making it clear that they were in control. They were not just taking down their targets, they were dismantling the very foundation of the criminal network. The impostors were sending a message: we are in control. Their reign of calculated chaos was just beginning, and the underworld of Detroit would never be the same again. The city was on edge, waiting for the next move in this deadly game of cat and mouse. The impostors had changed the rules, and now, everyone had to play by them. The Detroit Police Department was under immense pressure. The city was in turmoil, and the police force was struggling to keep up with the rising crime rates. Every day brought new challenges, and the officers were stretched thin, working long hours with little rest. The community's trust in the police was waning, and the department's reputation was on the line. The impostors were making them look incompetent. These criminals were not just any ordinary lawbreakers, they were cunning and elusive, always managing to stay one step ahead of the authorities. The media was relentless in their criticism, painting the police as ineffective and out of their depth. Press conferences were tense, with officers struggling to provide answers to the public's growing concerns. The FBI was called in, their best agents assigned to the case. The federal agency brought with them a wealth of resources and expertise, hoping to turn the tide in this seemingly unwinnable battle. The arrival of the FBI signaled a new phase in the investigation, one that promised a more coordinated and strategic approach. Special Agent Rebecca Beck Miller, known for her sharp mind and relentless pursuit of justice, was put in charge. Beck was a seasoned investigator with a reputation for cracking the toughest cases. Her determination and analytical skills made her the perfect choice to lead this high-stakes operation. She was not one to back down from a challenge, and this case was no exception.
The case was a puzzle with no easy answers. Each piece of evidence seemed to lead to more questions rather than solutions. The detectives were baffled, trying to connect the dots in a case that seemed to defy logic. The imposters' methods were sophisticated, and their ability to cover their tracks was unparalleled. The imposters were ghosts, leaving behind minimal evidence. They operated under the cover of darkness, striking in the dead of night when the streets were empty. Their meticulous planning ensured that they left no fingerprints, no DNA, nothing that could be traced back to them. It was as if they vanished into thin air after each crime. They were clearly experienced, familiar with police procedures, and had access to information that only law enforcement should have. This insider knowledge gave them a significant advantage, allowing them to anticipate the police's moves and stay ahead of the investigation. It was suspected that they had connections within the force, making the task of catching them even more daunting.
Beck and her team worked tirelessly, chasing dead ends and following flimsy leads. The investigation was grueling, with long nights and endless hours of sifting through evidence. The team was dedicated, but the lack of concrete leads was frustrating. Every promising lead seemed to fizzle out, leaving them back at square one. They interviewed informants, combed through police records, and analyzed crime scene photos. Each step was methodical, with the hope that a small detail might break the case wide open. Informants were often reluctant to talk, fearing retribution from the imposters. The team had to tread carefully, balancing the need for information with the safety of their sources. The pressure mounted with each passing day, the media scrutiny relentless. Reporters camped outside the police station, eager for any updates. The public's patience was wearing thin, and the demand for results was growing louder. Beck knew that the clock was ticking and the stakes were higher than ever. Beck knew they were dealing with a group who was always one step ahead. The imposters' ability to evade capture was a testament to their skill and planning. The team had to think outside the box, employing unconventional tactics to outsmart their elusive adversaries. It was a game of cat and mouse, with the imposters always seeming to have the upper hand.
The investigation was further complicated by the imposters' choice of victims. They targeted individuals who were already on the wrong side of the law, making it difficult to garner sympathy or cooperation from the public. These victims were often involved in criminal activities themselves, adding layers of complexity to the case. They only targeted criminals, making it difficult to gather reliable information. The criminal underworld was tight-lipped, and getting anyone to talk was a challenge. The imposters' victims were not the type to go to the police, and their associates were equally uncooperative. This lack of cooperation hindered the investigation, creating a wall of silence that was hard to break through. Many victims were too afraid to talk, fearing retaliation from both the imposters and the police. The fear was palpable, and it was clear that the imposters had instilled a sense of terror in the community. People were afraid to be seen talking to the authorities, worried that it would make them the next target. This atmosphere of fear and mistrust made the task of gathering information even more daunting for Beck and her team.